probably, okay, that'll probably work. We'll see how it goes. See if I can get all my technology going here. Fancy stuff. All right. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure. So I guess I'm here to talk about the future of public libraries, and I think kind of the format that I want to go with here is kind of explain to you kind of where libraries started, kind of where they've come, and some ideas about where they're headed. But as I'll kind of get to in my talk, for me what's really important for each individual public library is what its meaning is for the very specific community that it serves. And you all are a part of that, so I'd really be interested to hear what's important to you. We're building this new building, and I'll get into that some, and you all probably know that, but it's about what you want. We have our ideas, and we want to do things that delight people, but as far as I'm concerned, a library should be what the constituents that pay the tax dollars for it want it to be, and engaging in that dialogue is important to me, so hopefully we'll have some time to do that a little bit later. But first, our team at the library made me put more photos and stuff in this. I have very text-heavy, boring slide presentations, so they challenged me to make it much more visual and try note cards, so we'll see how this goes. So this is the future of public libraries in general, and also some specific future of the Lawrence Public Library, and I'm Brad Allen, the director of the library. Okay, so this was all written, and now I've put in stuff. So a little bit about me, and Bill mentioned this a little bit. I'm a native of Topeka, Kansas. So I was born and raised there. Then there's these little arrows I put in. Then I went to KU for my undergrad and was a proud member of the honors program, which is a really important part of my life, and made a large university something that I was going back and forth whether I wanted to go to a small liberal arts college or a big state place, and I was able to do both at the same time, which is one of the tremendous things about the honors program, and met so many great students and so many great professors. It was a fantastic thing. And then I built tires for a little while to raise money for library school, and then luckily got a scholarship, so I didn't have to do that as long as I thought I was going to, and ended up at the University of Illinois and did my library degree there, mainly in reference services and public services kind of focus. Wish I would have learned a little bit more about the computers than I did at the time, but alas. And then after that, still unsure whether I wanted to get a real job grinding it out in the day-to-day. I did a second master's at the University of Wisconsin in African American Studies, and had some great professors there, and it was a really great time to continue to do some research as I was thinking about what I wanted to do with my career. And from that, I decided that I didn't really want to write a dissertation. I enjoyed what I did at the master's level, but seemed like I was going to be doing homework and having that anxiety hanging over my head for the rest of my life, and I wasn't going to be able to mentally deal with that. Some people may be familiar with that in this room, but anyway, overwhelming for me. So about me, this is kind of my career in a nutshell. My first job, my wife and I wanted to go to a big city, so the one that was hiring was Los Angeles Public Library, and I was the children's librarian there, much to my surprise. And then I was a teen librarian, and that was enjoyable. And then I worked down in the main building in the Social Sciences, Philosophy, and Relations Department, which was pretty exciting being in downtown Los Angeles in this beautiful kind of Egyptian revival building. It was built in the late 20s. Then I came back to Topeka, where I'm from, and worked at the wonderful Topeka Shawnee County Public Library. Then I moved out to Everett, Washington for a couple years, where my wife's family lives. And we lived in the Seattle area, and I was a branch manager there. And then this wonderful opportunity in Lawrence came up, and I decided I really wanted to come back and be a part of this building project, which is such an exciting opportunity for our town. And it was an exciting opportunity for me in my career to be able to have the opportunity to do something like this and try to get a building built right, and that's right for the town, and that really functions and is something that we can be proud of as Lawrenceans. So, let me get rid of that antivirus. Let me click this part. I think since I'm not connected to the oh, good, it went away. All right. Can everybody hear me okay, by the way? Okay. I usually talk really loud, but I have a cold, and I've had nightmares. I lost my voice yesterday, and I was afraid that I was going to lose it again today, so I'm trying to talk more quietly than I normally do. So you usually don't know where you're going until you kind of know where you've been and where you are. So I just wanted to start with some backgrounds and foundation of history of libraries, which, you know, you all might know, but humor me. In the very beginning, you know, we created libraries to preserve very, very precious information. I don't know if these books all have chains on them. They're all chained to the stacks. These, you know, you didn't want to lose them. They were precious. They were protected. They were scarce. And so we needed a place to preserve and maintain these things. And that's the origins of libraries. And then as information began to explode, information was everywhere, and we had to start figuring out how to collect and contain it, expand spaces, provide it to the public. The public, I have Ray Bradbury up here. He's such a great proponent for libraries and believe. There's a little quote down here that says, "Libraries raised me. I couldn't go to college, so I went to the library 3 days a week for 10 years." And he graduated from the public library at the age of 28, and that was very important to him, and he saw it as the People's University, and that's what it was. This is a time that predates the internet and predates digital information, and so you had to go to a physical location to find this information, and it was still a repository. The world was analog. Everything we had was physical, and libraries stored it, and we still do today. But it's a little light in here, but that's a whole bunch of books that are in storage. That's at Ohio State, anyway. Lots of books there. It doesn't look so good in the light. But now, today, the world is digital. And like Bill said, you can get on your phone and, much to my shock, I guess, find out a whole lot of stuff about me, even. And so, why do we need a library? What is its meaning? Computers are central to how we deal with the world. Lots of people have them, others don't. We provide that basic service. And, you know, even something as simple as if you work at Walmart, your W-2 is online now. They don't even give you a physical one. You have to go. We help people at the library go to this weird website where they print out their W-2s. Everything is online now. So libraries have gone from this, the beautiful card catalogs that now I've seen, they're really good for holding bottles of wine. I've seen on the internet, so you might try that. The old cards written in, I don't know if they're in many librarians in here, it was much before my day. There were classes on how to write in library hand. It was a class. And so you see this beautiful script, and then you go to things that you may have seen. This is kind of a Wikipedia recreation of an old Dynex OPAC here, which were lovely and not a graphical interface, but very powerful, to this, going to a world catalog on your phone or iPad. So things have changed dramatically and quickly. But we've gone from this, I think that's the one that we had in my house, the 62 World Book, to this. And this. And these things. I tried to do this with just logos. Does everybody, to see how how ubiquitous they are? I don't know what word I was trying to say that I can't pronounce right now. This one has the words, but does everybody know what each of these things are? No. iTunes. Their new logo, people like the old one better. That's the new logo. This one? Napster.
Oh, yeah.
The one on the right. Napster is, they're more legit now than they used to be, but a MP3 music downloading website that really began peer-to-peer, people sharing things and creating lots of copyright confusion. The one on the far right? Amazon. Pirate Bay is kind of the new version of Napster that, is shut down, and then they move the servers to a different place and then get arrested again and then move them to another place. And then something that's even different from all these, just legal streaming online, Spotify down at the bottom. So when you have access to these things again, I think you have to continue to ask, what is our purpose? Why are we here? Why have a library? It's important to ask that question. There are answers to it. And then also we've come from this to this, a Nook or a Kindle. And so how does this transform what we do? So that's the world, but I wanted to talk about Lawrence a little bit too. I found this old picture in some of that's what the library looked like back when all the trees were not quite there yet, 40 years ago in 1972. That's our current building. And now we voted to build a new building and passed a bond issue, and this is kind of a rendering of looking to the northwest from Kentucky Street of what the new building is going to look like. So we passed this bond, and it was important to us to ask the community what it is that they wanted and why they wanted to pay for a new library in a bad economy, in a world where things are going digital. Why is this important to this town? Because it was. I wasn't here at the time, but I talked to Dave Corliss, and I've talked to lots of people, and people were impressed with the way in which this bond passed in a hard time. So there's meaning there. And this is what we were told. We were told that people want more space for kids. These are pictures from our library from Library Snapshot Day later in the fall. These are kids doing things in our library. All that other stuff was all illegal, copyrighted. I'm arguing fair use on all the other stuff I put on there with no credits. But these are from our library. And if you've been there, there's space, but there's not a lot of space. We need more space for kids to be kids. And I go on, if you've ever heard me talk a lot about technology and things like that, and I always forget to mention the kids, but really kids and how their imagination is sparked and how parents talk about what it meant to them to be in a library as a kid, what it meant for them as a parent to be with their kids in a library. That's powerful. It's powerful, and that's the core of what we do in a lot of ways. So that was essential to what we're doing in this new building. Also, this is a picture from us violating the fire code at the Lori Moriarty talk this summer. There were 170 people, there was an undisclosed amount of people at this event, and we need more space. This town wants events like this, and we don't quite have the space for it. We need a larger auditorium. We need more space. I was talking, you didn't introduce yourself to me, but we talked a little bit about meeting spaces. You know, we don't have a meeting space currently in our new building. This is quite small, and we just had one really in our gallery/meeting space. We will have 3 new meeting rooms that are of a normal kind of boardroom size. And we'll also have 4 or 5 very small little kind of 4 to 6 person meeting rooms where people can just meet and talk and discuss. And these are important and extremely important, as I kind of want to get to a little bit later. And also people wanted to make sure that we had state-of-the-art technology and that we were providing access to the internet with proper bandwidth for people with their own devices, and then just making sure that people could use some of these devices and see whether they have any meaning for their life, and whether, so we're trying to figure out ways that we can use an array of technology to help meet people's needs when it comes to finding or really even just enjoying consuming information. So, and I wrote this down, it's on my slides. Why have a library when you have Google? You can ask a better question than that, I don't think. And so it makes me ask, looking into the future, what else perhaps should libraries do to enrich the lives of people that they serve? And these are a few of the ideas that I have. Again, for public libraries, we really need to be thinking about what it is that our community wants. It's your money, it's our library. Here are a few of my ideas, and I'd be interested to discuss them later. Perhaps in this new world where information has become more ubiquitous and it's maybe less necessary to come to a physical space to get the information you need, perhaps we should be looking at new models and new things to do that delight our public. Jamie LaRue, who is the director of the Douglas County, Colorado Public Libraries, I was just at the American Libraries Association Midwinter Conference, was talking about the future of ebooks and information and how we consume And he said, perhaps libraries should be phasing out of being in the business of passive consumption and be looking more at creating collaborative, creative communities instead of a consumer community. And I think that kind of idea is something that would gain some traction in a town like this that has a university that has creative people who are wanting to share and create ideas, and a public library can help accomplish that. Some simple ideas of what libraries could do, and some libraries already are doing, and we intend to in the new space, is have content creation stations. And these could be something from small as, this is a photograph of something you can check out from the Darien, Connecticut Public Library. It's this little silver attaché case, and you open it up, and it has a MacBook, a camera, a flip video camera, and then that's, I think, a Roland Eterall MP3 recorder. So you can record audio, you can record video, and then you can edit all of this from this computer, and you can check this out from the public library, and you can create your own content. And perhaps you could do something in a physical space even more substantial than that. You could have a multi-track recording studio where people, this is again, Bill played, he showed my hand. I am a musician, or at least a former one, or I always say actually I'm a person who plays music. It's an insult to musicians to say that I was a musician, but I played music in a band. And this town, I think that's part of what this town is. So, and it's something that's dear to me, and I think it's dear to other people. Why not have a recording studio where people who are trying to learn how to make something of their music that they're creating have a space where you can record? This kind of creates a new level of volunteerism. There are people that live in this town who know how to do this stuff and want to share how to do that. And I think that's a new way to build community and to build a new way of volunteering that people have never thought of, and showing, I mean, the library certainly isn't going to have a recording engineer. It'd be nice if we could afford one. At this point we can't, but there are ways that we can figure out how to teach people to use this, at least in a real basic level, so that they can not have to spend even the small amount you need to spend to set up a recording studio in your house. And the room that we're looking at to make this happen in the basement will also double as a small video production space as well, where you could do just like small set film things that you could then edit with audio-visual software as well. And yeah, we're planning on having this in our new library, which is really exciting to me. We're calling the downstairs area the collaboratory, and the idea of trying to impress upon people that the library is a space where people come to collaborate and create new ideas. It's fun reading. I read all the time. I'm a passive consumer of information. We all are, and that also helps us generate ideas as we consume information to create new ideas. But this is kind of where we're thinking of looking to the future. Other things, we don't currently have this kind of idea planned, but I love this idea, and I love trying to have partnerships with spaces in the community who are looking at this. Another thing that is really starting to happen in our world now is going not just from, I just started reading a book by Chris Anderson called Makers, and it's about going from a digital era of being able to be an entrepreneur in a digital bit and byte kind of world on the internet to going to a digital world where you can create three-dimensional objects and not need a factory to do it. And this is kind of the evolution of digital technology. And these maker spaces are places where people can usually pay money to have access to bigger tools and electronic things. This is an Arduino microcontroller, which you could program to turn lights on and off and all these things. This is a 3D printer where if you have a product, you can design it three-dimensional space, and then you can actually print it. Like I love the idea of this as a small business development model. You can build your prototype, and how we'd use this in the library at this point I'm not sure, because like that little rabbit probably takes about 10 to 15 hours to produce, so how the logistics would work I'm not sure, but certainly at least showing people this in a way to spark their imagination as to what's possible, I think it's really powerful. I've not been reading all of the cards. Okay. And then lastly, I think really what's important for a library, especially in a college town, or really in any town, is to be a place that's a community common place, and or a third place if you've read Ray Oldenburg's any of his books, talking about you have your first place, which is your home, your second place, which is your place of work, and then the third space that exists outside of both of those where you talk and engage with people. That's a coffee shop, that's a tavern, and then Third Place Books is a great bookstore in the Seattle area that has really doubled down on, they have a commons area and food, and you can eat, and they have programming, and it's just there to stimulate discussion. And I think about this and why it's important to our town, and I think our library to think about. Another person I saw talk at ALA Midwinter is a guy, Stephen Johnson. He's written lots of nonfiction, and most recently he's looking at how people discuss and engage online. And what he says is powerful about libraries is that there are things that we do that allow people to collaborate in original and innovative ways. We're a place where open information is available, that big data where you gather all this information there, it's at your fingertips, and then being a place where everybody comes, you have this diverse level of thought, right? So people, doctors, lawyers, dentists, librarians, whatever, whomever, machinists are all talking about how they see different ideas, and it can create these moments where new and innovative ideas are created. And I think having that kind of collaborative discussion space can be really powerful. And I'll leave you with one final thought from Melville Dewey, who's kind of a progenitor of libraries and the founder of the loved and hated Dewey Decimal System, the founder of the American Library Association, and the founder of Library Bureau. This guy is a really intelligent capitalist. Build furniture and then sell it to libraries and create an organization. He's quite clever fellow. But at any rate, one thing that he said, and I believe he said this in 1926, kind of later in his career, but I find it to be important and informative in how we continue to think about libraries. He said this a long time ago. If the library's function is to give the public in the quickest and cheapest way information, inspiration, and recreation. If there's a better way than the book that can be found, we should use it. And so thinking about this, I think what's powerful about libraries is we provide, if we can provide these three things, which are quite common words that are used in the mission statements of many public libraries, the information is there for you to think about and inspire you, and for you to be thinking about it in a recreational way, and then pairing that also with the idea of a diverse community of ideas and thoughts of the community will really allow our city, I think, to come up with new and innovative ideas that just make our town a better place to live. And I think that is one of the directions that we can be thinking about libraries go. So these are some of my ideas, but as I said before, this is our library and our town's library. So I'm really interested if you all would humor me, and we have a great group of folks here. I'd like to hear your thoughts about your library, if you'd be willing to share and answer any questions, and just kind of get a better sense of how I can go about doing my job in a way that our town can be proud of, and that we can celebrate our library. So that's the end of my formal presentation, and let's talk for a little bit. Ma'am.
I was thinking when you were going through that you did not use the four-letter word that we usually associate with libraries. It did come up in this last quotation of Dewey. That's B-O-O-K, book, a four-letter word. And also, perhaps you want to think about changing the name, because library comes from the Latin word for book. So perhaps you'd like to change the name of this institution. And if you think I'm being a little edgy, I am, because I love books, and I feel in my heart, I mean, the library, as I have experienced it, and what it has helped me in many ways, has been not information, but the books that I have
they were wonderful for summer vacation.
So
Absolutely.
Perhaps
you would like to change the name of this institution. And we might think about what that would be. Anybody have any ideas for changing the name from library, since we're really not talking about liber anymore, or libers, or however you pronounce this in Latin? I'm being obnoxious, because I feel very threatened by the loss of something that I hold dear to my heart, and I think that many people here probably do too. So.
And honestly, I'm glad that you mentioned that. You may have noticed and I even mentioned it in my self-referential way that I tend to have. I always forget to put kids in my slideshow, because I've worked in adult services my whole life, and I don't have kids, but I put that slide in there because people always say, "What about the kids, Brad?" I'm like, to me, the kids are such a foregone conclusion in my mind. I forget to talk about them sometimes, and I would say the same thing about books. You're right. Books are our brand, and I think sometimes I don't really fully represent myself as a book lover. I certainly should come to my house, or that's what I remember. I very naively, when I came to library school, they're like, "Why are you to library school?" And I said, "Well, I just love books." And they basically would run you out of a library school for saying something so facile as that. And if you really look at it now, you make a good point. Lots of library schools they are now library and information science schools, and in fact, many of them have dropped library entirely. So you make a good point. I personally believe they were named at a time where the book was the primary vessel of information. And now we live in an era where, and that's how we codify it, that's how we think of it, as a codex, or as a monograph, or as a book, and that was how information was contained. And I do think it's very powerful. But I don't know, it makes me think. It's a great question. Ma'am?
Well, you could call it info station.
Yeah.
Information station, whatever, but that's not... I have a couple of questions. Let me start with what I think is... I have a couple of questions. And the most important is, how do you as a Lawrence library interface with the university library and its functions?
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that. That was one thing, that was one thing that I lost out of my narrative thread. I wanted to talk about partnerships, and I didn't put that in my notes. For me, I think it's essential, and something that's really exciting to me. I've met with the dean of the libraries a few different times, who is delightful, and she, Lorraine, is very interested in creating partnerships with us as well.
But how?
How?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question.
In terms of purchasing, curatorial issues, conservation issues.
Exactly. I've asked that question in these talks before. When you have an institution that their mission is to preserve these types of academic materials, to what extent do you need that at the public library if you have a great relationship that gets that information to people very quickly from up on the hill? Most people, it's hard to get up here, it's hard to park. It's just enough of a barrier that they're not going to bother, right? And so you have to duplicate that physical material. But in fact, if you had a good relationship, which is one that, as right now we're dealing with this building project, and I'm just kind of in hard hat mode. But when we get done with that, I'm very interested in that. I think that as efficient as we can be, we can have a much broader, if there are 3 million books at KU that they're allowing us to borrow the vast majority for the public and even bring them to our library, why would we need to duplicate that service? What could we do that would enhance? I'm very interested in, I don't even know how we'd be able to connect our catalogs together. And we already do this to an extent with the courier system, and we already, interlibrary loan lots of books, but I'd like it to be even closer relationship. And I think also, in addition, it comes with programming, which is another thing I didn't talk about. One of the things that people love about our library in the small amount of time I've been here is the great programs that we do for the public. that are entertainment, that are informational, and I think really working with the university. We've done that with Read Across Lawrence. We partnered with them pretty heavily, and they were a great resource. And we had some of our programs here, and they brought some things down. That whole Town and Gown collaboration, I think, with collections and with programming are really important and can benefit both. And when I think about it, I think, what does the university have that would help benefit us, and then what do we have? Their mission isn't necessarily popular materials. They're working on that. They buy McNaughton books, and to rent. They have rental books that they check out to students. But that's an expensive system. Why not have a public library kiosk in Watson and check things out there? I mean, there's ways to save money. I mean, money is precious. But I'm very interested in that. Bill.
I'm getting back for a moment to the subject of books. I know your presentation emphasizes all this new media, technology, people meeting. I've been assuming all along that there still would be one or two books kicking around in the library, even though you didn't talk about it.
Yeah, there will be. I truly believe, and not that it, and this has nothing to do with libraries, I don't believe, but to do with publishing and the current state of how people consume information. I mean, I don't see the collection getting. I would see that the collection that we have will be as large as it will ever be the day that we open that new library. Publishing is changing, and how people want to consume it is changing. I mean, it's been really interesting to me. I love your point because I'm a book lover too. I mean, I really am, and the reason, and I'm really not much of a I'm a technophobe. I'm a technophile, really because in certain ways, I felt like it's my job. I've always kind of been a crusty, old-fashioned. I like a book too, right? But then I bought a Nook because I thought it was important for me to understand how this new technology works because that's my job as a librarian, right? And I bought one, and it was very addictive. I could kind of get whatever I needed. It's kind of like the difference between VHS and DVD right now. Like when that happened, you can't get everything you want. Like most of their authors that I like weren't available in ebooks; they were too obscure. But now all that stuff is starting to come online, and it's so easy. And I had my e-reader, and I'm sitting there reading it, and then people are like, "Oh, I love books. How can you stay to look at that thing?" I was like, And then they got an e-reader, and then they were like, "Oh man, I love this thing." I was like, okay. And then the next person, and it was really interesting to see in libraries the wave of how people use these devices, and I think you can use them for both. Like I believe a lot of what we read is very ephemeral, and really the words are what are important. And I collect vinyl. I like to listen to records, and for me it's a similar medium that books are. To me, books have value just in what they mean as an object and what they signify about me as a person and my care for these material objects. I feel the same way about records. So it's that, but how you consume information and what books mean it's complicated. Dennis?
I'm struck by what I think is probably an emotional dimension of this thing, not all intellectual. I started off with books and tried to make a transition to computers. I couldn't be on the campus without doing that. My grandchildren are starting with computers. When I get in deep trouble on my computer, I call my 13-year-old granddaughter, who is my computer consultant, who can fix anything I've screwed up.
Right.
But she still, and it's been absolutely wonderful watching her. They can cruise the internet for all kinds of information. They've taught me how to do that, and yet I can see them wanting books. They love to hold the book in their hand. When we go on vacation, they come along. Often will come along. We're up in the Northwoods. We can access the internet, but they'd rather sit under a tree with a book. And when I think about that is that it's not just about kind of an intellectual information thing. It's about there's something emotional about it. There's an emotional dimension about bookness or about that kind of experience. I think that's worth paying attention to. I think the reason that libraries exist today is that people have some kind of intrinsic emotional kind of relationship with the physical book, like people have with newspapers. I suspect that as you move forward in your work, you're going to have to pay attention to that dimension as much as you're going to have to pay attention to the kind of intellectual information searching, seeking part of what this is all about.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I agree. I think about that a lot, and then I also think about the other side of it. You know, and if you look at circulation, you know, the amount of books that people check out from public libraries. We like to say that our stats are going up, but they're going up because we buy lots of DVDs and CDs. Don't be misled by the politics of that. I mean, if you want me to be candid, fiction is peaking a little bit, but that's, you know, to me, this is what I think about, because we do live in a world of books. I love books, but I have to be a bit of a futurist sometimes. You know, and I think libraries need to be prepared and understand the future. This is how I try to think of the world as a public librarian, and it goes back exactly to what Bill said, and I believe it. You know, and it goes back to what Melville Dewey said, if everybody can get the books when the information that they want in a model that is ubiquitous and free, as the world seems in certain ways is starting to move towards, do you just shut the libraries down? I don't believe that you do, but I worry that if we don't think about the future, we'll be unprepared to have a good answer, and that you may as well. And for me, so I try to think, you know, what is it? You know, I don't think the books are going to vanish anytime soon, but in a certain respect, they will, or they will change and they will evolve. And I think it's important to think about what is the point of the library. Or as I tell people, and a lot of people don't buy this argument, I believe that the book is a physical, emotional manifestation of what ideas mean to us. And, you know, it's like people love like opening the box and they're like, it's like Christmas. And I was like, the book is like it's like you're transferring how you feel about what you care about onto a physical object. It's very psychological and emotional,
Well,
like
it's
you say.
an example of that. I just finished a paper that required me to function as a historian, which I'm not. And I could get a lot of the information I wanted off of the internet. So I also went down to the library and found the same objects there, like telephone directories and very old manuscripts. I'm telling you, there's something different about holding those objects in my hand, looking at those objects, and interacting with those objects. It's something different about that than about the computer. And it is that psycho-emotional piece of it. And I don't know that I got that figured out. All I know is it feels a hell of a lot different, and it feels better.
It does. I think it seems that it's more transient. I think about that sometimes when you have something as ubiquitous.
You would feel better, but look around.
Oh, but my granddaughter, 13, behaves exactly the same way. She can do the information search standing on her head gargling peanut butter. And she can find books on the net, but she experiences something intrinsically, emotionally meaningful holding a book. Not only that, she hoards them. She has them in her room.
Yeah, but, well, I'm not going to get into it, but it's the whole, that's your house. And a lot of other houses,
The point is,
have only the computer.
Right. But I would guess that my house generalizes to other houses.
Your house doesn't generalize, I think, to what the houses are going to be like 50 years from now.
Part of what I feel deep down about libraries, and I especially learned this at this university in Watson Library, they hushed you up in there. It communicated to me that this is a place of reverence. And it's more than just about information, folks, a hell of a lot more. And it's a hell of a lot more than entertainment and fun. One of the great theological words is edification. I would go to a library to be edified, to be inspired by ideas and led to higher degrees of creativity. Hell, I suppose we need the information, but if we lose the other, we've lost the guts of the library system.
Walk into Watson and
part
you're
of what
having
is the crisis in our country the last I knew, there were, on average, about 475,000 books published each year. Now, you can't tell me that even a fraction of those are important books. And part of a library ought to be guiding people to the best of the books, in whatever form, if you put it on an iPad or whatever. I mean, somebody has to, and that's what a university is for, is not to let everything inform everybody. It's guiding to the very best on that subject. You get my point?
Oh, I absolutely do. And I think, it brings up, it brings up some really key issues of what public libraries deal with and what we grapple with. I think, and how we define ourselves. I agree with you on that front. But, at the same time, what libraries, I guess, in a certain way, unlike a university, is providing the information for you to think about it, ingest it, and figure out what you will with it. It's a bystander, and that there is no. I mean, earlier I think there was more of an there was a goal in mind there, and we do have. The goal. Our stated goals and ones I believe in are precisely what Ray Bradbury says. It's a place to come and to think and to reflect and to learn. And I don't know, and that's, I think, at our root what we want. But at the same time, if do you not provide people who want these other things what they want with the money they gave you with public tax dollars? It's tricky. I totally get what you're saying. I think it's delicate. Is it and I think it's, and I think that the argument that you make is it is more compelling. I think I think about this a lot. I don't have a good answer for it. I don't think, but that is a powerful argument to me, and it sounds more powerful than being the place where people can pick up the newest season of Homeland. But what is our role? Because I think that if you don't have a singular role like that, you can people can make a strong argument on why you shouldn't provide that popular entertainment. Should you? I don't know. I think of I think of lots of different parts and realms of this, because that's also the highest theft stuff we have. So it's frustrating to me. We buy these expensive, popular things, and they get stolen. We spend lots of money on this, and to what point?
One of the good words that popped up there was commonplace. It got me thinking. A commonplace. A library is a common place for quiet reflection, and then for critical reflection with others. And I hope you put enough space in this new facility, because it lacked it in the old one, for groups to form and reflect upon the best.
That's part of the goal of this new building. Absolutely.
But who defines the best? What about censorship or some of those things that come into play?
Oh, who determines what is best, and can that lead to censorship? Again, I think
it's a matter of community and consensus. It's not negative, it's positive. It's what he was describing. When we can get together as formal and informal groups, then we'll come to consensus on what is best, and we will promote it. But we don't go negative and say, you can't.
Right, and I think, for me, that's what I think can be powerful about a library, is the plurality of ideas that people have. And that's why I try to surround myself with people who are different from me and that challenge me. I don't like to be, well, sure, we'd like to be around people who agree with everything you say, but you don't gather much benefit other than a big head.
On a less controversial subject, have you thought about looking for sponsors to pay for things like the audio studio thing?
We have,
Have you?
We're working on those, and our
I'm
foundation
curious.
is great, and they're working for naming, like, there are naming opportunities for
Yeah, yeah.
meeting rooms. We've applied for some grants for the recording space. I think that there would be I think there would be a good opportunity for somebody to have a small gift to, like, having that 3D printer that I showed. They're not really, the technology is not there for that to be a fully operational thing, but I like the idea. They cost about $1,500 to $2,000. I like the idea of having one there to show off. I mean, when I saw one of those for the first time at an Endicott Society thing that I was invited to, I mean, it blew my mind. They're still too slow. I mean, how do you logistically say, okay, this is going to take 18 hours to print this, you come pick it up, and how are you going to pay for it? But even just bringing it out programmatically and saying, like, this is what's happening now. You can transfer an idea through the internet and print it out in 3 dimensions on the other side. That's pretty incredible.
Do you have on staff a paper conservator and an electronics conservator? Who's going to take care of your computers and iPads and whatever, and then who's going to take care of your books?
More or less we do. We have our collection development department and
I mean hands-on. There was a wonderful slide that showed with the worm coming up out of the book.
yeah.
Who takes care of the worms in the books? And who takes care of...
Our technical services deal with, like, a lot of times books they're inexpensive enough now that it's a lot of times cheaper to buy a new one than repair it, but they are, work with our circulation department to maintain a collection that is in good shape. And electronics are kind of a blend of our IT, and I'd like to see our public services folks know a little bit more about that stuff to be able to engage with people on the front lines about it. Has a hand up for a long time back there.
Yeah, I've got a run thing, but there was a couple ideas that I'd heard other libraries do, especially to try to save smaller ones, so I'm not sure how relevant it is here. But one in Colorado, in a smaller town in Colorado, NPR just did a little story on it, where their public library was failing because there wasn't enough interest from the general community, and the community was shrinking too. And one initiative they're trying out this year, rather than success, is to have a seed library as well, kind of
Yes.
like a seed bank for local gardening seeds that you check out seeds at the beginning of the season, you grow, and then you return a similar or more amount of those seeds of that particular variety back to it. And it
Yeah.
keeps growing a collection and expands, and that was one that I've been excited about here since I heard that story.
Yeah, we've been looking at that story too, and just recently heard about that on NPR. We put it on our Facebook page, and a lot of people asked, we have 4,600 people that are fans of our library on Facebook, and they're very engaged, and we asked them questions, and there were a lot of people who were really into that idea. Again, it seemed again, I think it's all what your community wants, and it sounded like the response was our community was like, yeah, there are partnerships that we can make with, like, local food, with people who are interested in local food and things like that. It's those kinds of things, or, like cake pans is another really popular one. There's a library in Kansas that checks out cake pans. How many times do you need the Toy Story 2 cake pan? Once.
American Girl doll.
Yeah, I mean...
That one in Rhode Island, I think, or Connecticut.
And libraries used to check out art. The Topeka Library used to check out art until somebody stole all of it, whatever. But yeah, sir.
The other idea was that I've seen before. You were talking about like a music creation and potentially recording studio, but to make your own personal publication of a zine, especially like
Yeah.
personal magazine, and publish yourself and print just on regular paper, but to have some kind of station where it would have the applications to do that easily, but also have the printers and the binders right
Yeah.
there that are affordable for people to communicate their own information. Because after being at the university, a lot of textbooks are definitely not, in my opinion, the best for a majority of classes. I took on what was out there. It depends on your communication style and what aspect you're looking at of any given subject. But
Right.
to have the ability to read those and then find out something else and put that into print that could be available to you would be really exciting.
No, I think Sacramento Public Library has what's called a book espresso machine, I think. They cost about $250,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a printer hooked up to the internet. I mean, I don't understand why they're so expensive, but at any rate, yeah, I mean, and you could look at lease options. I believe there's one here on campus somewhere, but they're quite expensive. But yeah, I mean, I guess for me, you know, that type of commonplace of ideas is something that I'm interested in a digital way. I think that, you know, I'd like to grow this to where we have that where people are, in the different ways that people are expressing themselves, that we're helping share stories, and the library can be that conduit, that whether it's writing a text that either ends up being an EPUB or something that is printed out, something that we have that is reflective of the community, whether it's music or film, just all of the different ways that people express themselves. I like the idea of, especially as we question how copyright works and how you distribute things, and say if something is funded with tax dollars, what type of right might you be able to get in some Creative Commons way that we could. I like the idea of having a repository on our website where all of the things that we've created as a place are available. And and then you have to figure out gateways to who you're sharing it with. Like, we're wanting to try to do some kind of a local music project where you would have access to digital files of local bands, but you would have to have your library card because you want to, if that's advertised to the whole world, it wouldn't be fair for them to license their music to you and then have anybody get it for free when they're trying to make money as an artist. So figuring out all those things and how a shared resource could be shared with the population that pays for it based on how they pay taxes. I'm interested in all of those different things. We're kind of, the way the space worked out, we're taking the music and video part first, but I'm really interested in exploring the written word as well, too. Ma'am.
When you do our early history and you make your slide, you ought to have one of the Andrew Carnegie Library that we have on 9th and Vermont.
Yeah.
This is nostalgic there. And just the concept of a place where people could go for free and read anything that they wanted. And I remember one of the first occupants of that old library was Langston Hughes, who got his education reading books there, and then went out and wrote books. And I just think that's such a rich heritage all over our country. The idea that books are free for everybody, and that shouldn't go away.
Agreed, yeah, and there are so many of those, so many towns, this one, and whether they're still occupied or have been reused in other places.
Kid in the corner sitting by himself reading books.
Yes, how can I read a bestseller without buying the book?
It's hard.
Well, for example, Uncle Phil has just written a book that's just been published. It was written up in the Journal World last Sunday in their library page. I'd like to read the book, but I don't think I want to buy it.
Therein lies the crucial question of budgeting in libraries. How many copies do you buy to fill demand that then you will have far too many copies when the demand wanes? And additionally, as people are interested in ebooks, as many people are, how do we supply those when many of the large publishers do not sell ebooks to libraries at all? This Jamie LaRue that I mentioned previously, I think each week he publishes the New York Times bestsellers list, and then he takes what they cost us in print with our 40% discount that's pretty standard for public libraries, what they cost a customer on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and then what they cost a library if they're available at all. And it's pretty amazing. Sometimes up to 90% of bestsellers are unavailable for purchase for libraries. And if they are, at times they are at 2 to 3 times list price. So Random House, for example, charges us 300% of list price to purchase an ebook. So if there's something you're interested in from Random House, most books cost $27, $28. They would cost us $81 to $84 to purchase one copy, and it's single use. It's not multiple use. So you check it out, you have it for 2 weeks, and then it goes to the next person. And when you look at return on investment and how much it costs per checkout on a book, which really has to drive the way that we do business, how do you sustain that? And should you sustain it if you as an individual whose tax money I'm collecting could buy it for an eighth of the cost? Why would I do that?
Less on Kindle.
Yeah, when you could buy it for $12.99 and it cost me $84, why should I spend your money that way?
I don't like to read a computer screen.
Have you tried the little Nook with the e-ink? You can jack the font way up.
I like black on white, not the other way around.
Oh, you can get the e-ink that way. It's pretty nice. And actually, we're starting to get what has been the really interesting effect of ebooks, and I saw it in Everett as I worked on the desk. Lots of older readers who have macular degeneration or just their eyes are starting to go. They're reading again now because they have an e-reader and they can increase the font, and reading is going up.
Absolutely.
It's pretty amazing. And like, I'm a highly distracted reader, so if I have less words on a page, I can concentrate more. When there's a whole bunch of words on a page, I start thinking about other things. I don't have good concentration skills. Right.
Yeah, I've got a story and then a question. Many years ago, I was sitting across the street on a Sunday afternoon across from the Carnegie Library, talking to my girlfriend. We were having kind of an intimate conversation there, which I couldn't interrupt. Even though I saw a man coming down the street walk up to the front door of the library, which was closed at the time, opened the book door, reached in and pulled out several books, and then walked away. But I couldn't interrupt my conversation with this woman because it was very intimate, but there's somebody who took books. My question to you is, your daily workday today and this week, what percentage of time do you spend on the new library like Hardhat versus the temporary library?
This week, pretty much over at that new library getting it set up, because we're still kind of getting everything up and running. But yeah, that's a balance, that we're trying to think of. And right now, they're in the last stages of getting the construction documents finished. So we're getting close to getting that online and figuring it out. And then I'll be spending a lot more of my time over there looking at the new building and see how it goes up. It's going to start being constructed hopefully somewhere in March or so. They're getting ready to put the library. There's two components. There's the parking garage and site work, which is already bid by City Commission earlier and has started work. You can see the big hole getting bigger. And then the bids have not been sent out on the library building itself, and that will happen soon. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I cannot
Will
wait.
be a parking lot rather than a bomb shelter being built there.
Parking garage.
Yeah. Is it a bomb shelter or is it a parking?
It's parking garage. It'll be
Like a
4
pretty deep
stores
hole,
now.
anyway.
4 stories now. They passed the benefit
Oh,
district.
God.
325 parking spaces.
Be sure that it has good labeling. The problem I have found with the one that we have is that you go in, you drive in, you don't know where to go. The signs are inadequate.
Parking garages are confusing,
I know.
especially for us Midwesterners. I learned that in LA and Seattle.
And
We don't like parking garages.
no, I hate parking.
Brad, thank you very much for coming today.
Thanks so much